If you're a facilities manager at a university, you know students rely on the cafeteria for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and the occasional late-night snack. So when a dishwasher breaks down and dirty plates pile up, the mess hall can turn messy in the blink of an eye. Enter Grainger. With over 1 million industrial-grade products and fast delivery, the product you need now is never far away. So you can turn that dishwasher back into a lean, clean washing machine. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
And this is going to be a special episode of Reverb Common Sense. We're breaking in with some live news that's going on. It's really sickening and sad right now, and I don't even know where to start. We're going to be having everybody calling in momentarily. I know Ken Conservative. I think Sean Sackhead will be calling in, and I think we got a couple others. This is... it is absolutely sickening. For those that have not seen the news yet, in Dallas, Texas, BLM was protesting. Hang on. They were protesting a couple of shootings that have happened, and 2 gentlemen, it seems like right now, set up a sniper's position and have fired on officers. The numbers are changing really fast. I think we're up to 11 shot, 4 dead. I'm at a loss for words. This is absolutely disgusting. Even if those other shootings that happen and the officers turn out to be in the wrong, this is not the way justice is done in this country. And hang on. And also, there's being reports that they have one of the shooters pinned down, and there's reports that they were going to or have planted explosives in downtown Dallas. I'm very tongue-tied right now. This is absolutely disgusting. A friend of mine that's an officer stated this, and this is the best thing I heard for someone to say. And I'm pulling it up so I don't misquote him. Every protester in Dallas just hunkered down behind police cars driven to the scene by those quote-unquote racist evil cops when the shots started popping off. So there's people that were slamming the officers. Hello?
Hey, this is Ken McClinton from the Exceptional Conservative Show.
How you doing, Ken? It's Jersey Joe, and as much as I like hearing from you, I hate that we're talking underneath these circumstances.
Okay.
I'm kind of speechless at this. I'm pissed beyond words.
This is an abomination. And we're seeing the mob rule. Michael Jones, the professor, Dr. Michael Jones, was with us earlier this morning. We were talking and just began to erupt. We were going through the breakdown of the rule of law in this country.
Ken, are you there?
Yeah.
Okay, you're fading in and out a little bit.
Okay. Let's see what we can do about that.
All right. Well, it sounds like you were on a cell phone driving down the road and kind of like you faded out for a moment.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
No problem. Testing 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, I can hear you perfect now.
Okay, great. Great.
It's
Wow.
it's now we are at 11 officers shot, 3 have been killed, and last I heard there's 2 in surgery that are critical. So these numbers, yeah, it's. I don't know what to say, Ken, and it's, as you said, the mob rules. It's coming from the leadership down, and I'm not trying to Obama. It's his.
No.
Go ahead.
No, it's what to be.
Ken? Ken? It seems we may have lost Ken. It's... And I'm not trying... I blame Obama and everything, but this one is coming down... The administration has started just this downfall of our country. He's been wanting this split no matter what cost. And the cost tonight is police officers. And these police officers that were there protecting those protesters, they have now lost their lives. Because they were there to protest or protect the people that were there to try to make the lives of cops even harder. We don't know. All right, let's try it. You there, Ken?
I'm right here.
All right, so I don't know what happened. You were talking, you cut in and out, and then just I got a beep on my phone, and that was it.
Okay.
What were you about to say when got cut?
Yeah, what I was saying is that this is an abomination. This is actually watching the ideology of the left run wild. We see it with Black Lives Matter. We see a group of people who believe, based on race, that they have been abused and misused. You have the emotions dealing with the Baton Rouge shootings and the St. Paul, Minnesota shooting by the police officers. And there are individuals out there that want to take advantage of this opportunity to do harm to those who have done well in terms of protecting our nation.
You still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
All right. I took my headset off for a second. My wife was talking to me. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no problem.
It's this mentality, and I don't see how you can even justify what happened. Even if they turn out to be, and so many times this Black Lives Matter and the administration jumps on throwing guilt to the officers right off the bat, and how many times has it happened when the facts come out? Well, the officers weren't exactly in the wrong.
Exactly. We're looking at a picture that with Freddie Gray in Baltimore, where 6 officers were condemned, their careers destroyed by a relentless mayor and attorney general.
All right, hold on, Ken.
Who stopped only vigilante justice.
Hold on, Ken. We got Sackhead Sean calling in, so let me get him patched in real quick.
Great.
All right. You there, Sean?
Hey, Joe.
Hey, we still got Ken here?
I'm right here.
Okay.
Hey, Sean.
And good evening. How are you, sir?
Great, sir. What an abomination. This is ungodly. and it's got to stop. It's got to stop right here. It's got to stop tonight.
It's not going to. It's not.
Yeah. Well, first of all, Ken, I couldn't agree with you more. Obviously we don't know the motivation of this shooter in the sense that there's always that possibility that there's an ISIS sympathizer that used this as an opportunity. And I'll be the first one to admit that. I am hoping, as sad as that sounds, I'm using the hopeful side of my brain to think that, and not that it was a member of the Black Lives Matter protest or this anti-police protest that was going on, even though, evidence would surely suggest that on early reports. You have an elevated sniper position. Reports are coming out now. There may be explosives in the area. That concerns me, but it also pushes my brain to possibly the terrorism aspect, the ISIS aspect as well. Either way, though, Ken, I agree. It needs to stop. Where's this president? I tweeted Facebook a little while ago. He was so quick to come to the microphone today, given the last two shootings.
Hold on one second. I don't mean to interrupt.
Officers.
Hold on. We got Dan calling in.
All right.
All right, Dan, you there?
Hey, Dan.
Hey, I'm here.
All right, I think we have
Hey, Dan.
everybody, so.
Wow.
And Clint may be calling in.
All right.
Okay, are we on now?
Yes.
We are.
You want the latest update that I just gave?
Yes, please.
Okay, this is the latest update that we have. So far, 3 Dallas police officers have been killed. 1 DART officer was killed. Several others were injured after shots were fired downtown Dallas during a rally in March Thursday night. Dallas Police Chief David Brown said preliminary details are that 2 snipers shot 10 police officers from elevated positions during the rally in downtown. We now know that a 11th police officer has been shot. He was shot during an exchange with one of the suspects. Of course, like we said, 3 are dead, 2 are in surgery, 3 are in critical condition. There's no suspects in custody at this time. Chief Brown did say that the suspects, there's reports that the suspects were threatening to plant explosives in downtown Dallas. All of the officers were taken to Parkland Hospital. One of the other officers was taken to Baylor University Medical Center in downtown Dallas. Anyone with information about the shootings is asked to call the Dallas Police Department at area code 214-671-3485. Bystanders reported hearing multiple shots fired near the area of Market and Main Streets, but police have not confirmed any of the details. To kind of give everybody an idea of where this shooting actually took place, especially if you remember us reporting live from the Texas GOP State Convention. This is kind of in that general area. It's in the convention center area of Dallas, where the Omni Hotel is. Yep. It's also in the area where the Dallas Morning News is, where it actually most of this incident took place in the around the Bellow Park area, which is around the area with the Dallas Morning News, the West End, etc. Of course, Sean, since you were in Dallas with us, for 4 days, you became very familiar with this area, just like us. So you know that it's a lot of area, a lot of high rises, a lot of parking garages, certainly a lot of vantage points. A lot of vantage points for these for the snipers to just quite honestly just pick off at random these officers. There's no doubt this was a planned attack. We have, if you go and visit, and I'm hoping, I believe that you guys have started plastering the first suspect that we have a picture of. We posted a picture of the suspect on the Facebook page for High Place Pundit. This was released. You can go to the Dallas Morning News Twitter feed and also share it from there. But please, if you're listening, plaster this son of a bitch's picture
Dan,
all over Facebook, all over social
Dan,
media.
let me jump in real quick because Dallas Police Department Twitter just updated 4th officer has died.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah, we had an unconfirmed report that he had passed away, but now they are confirming that he has passed away. So, and that's kind of...
Dan, I was saying just before you came on, the terrorism nexus. Obviously, based on the information we have, we would think that this is related directly to the Black Lives Matter protests. But the bomb threat aspect, should that be true, doesn't that open up the potential that there could be some sort of ISIS nexus involved to this?
There could be, but this also, I'll be honest, Sean, this also has the Black Panthers written all over it. This has the Nation of Islam written all over it. This is the type of terrorist they used in the 60s.
Statement.
This is a terrorist attack.
Terrorism. Yeah,
this is a terrorist attack. No matter how you look at it, this is a terrorist attack.
And Dan, like you said, we were just down there a month ago, or just over a month ago, covering this in that area. And I had the opportunity, and obviously everyone knows my background is in law enforcement, and that part of me is just furious right now and extremely saddened for the families of these officers. But I also had the opportunity every time I rode DART to talk to the DART police officers and thank them for being there. And the officers that were at the convention, I was fortunate. I probably talked to 45 police officers that week that were protecting the area and doing their job. And, this really brings full circle emotionally and intellectually how close it can hit every individual in this country.
And I want to point out something too, Sean.
City.
Yeah, I want to point out something too. The DART officers are unarmed. There's something to think about right there. The DART officers are unarmed.
No, the actual DART transit police officers are actual sworn armed police officers.
Yes, okay, you're correct.
Carry weapons.
Right.
They have DART security that is unarmed, but
that is unarmed.
DART police officers are fully armed, fully sworn, classified peace officers in the state of Texas.
Right, and the DART officers were, to give you kind of an idea, these guys patrol the DART stations, the bus stations downtown. Some of them are in patrol cars. Most of these guys are on Segways, on foot, that type of stuff, on motorcycles, etc. Yep. And so we're trying to get a report and see exactly, the spectrum, because we know about the police officers, but to see how much, of the actual DART security, because once again, this was at an area that the officers were congregated. They were there to protect these folks. And really, they were there for the protection of the protesters. And then here they end up being the victims.
Yeah, and where did those protesters dive and hide? They went behind the cops and cop cars.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, no, they hid behind the police. And listen, I've already seen a few interviews with protesters who sang the praises of the law enforcement there, and I got to give credit when it's due. And again, I've said time and again, you have the right to go out and protest if you feel like something's wrong. And it does show you that people can feel that the system has problems, but the individual officers aren't necessarily the problems. But one of the things that these DART police officers do, because I've already had a couple people message me and ask, why were the DART police officers, if they're on the trains, why are they dealing with this when it's a Dallas PD issue? When you have a major event like this, what happens is the unified agencies, allied agencies, give what's called mutual aid. DART police officers in the state of Texas, they're like any other police officer. They can enforce a law anywhere in the state of Texas at any time. Like I said, they're fully trained. As a matter of fact, usually your transit officers have a very high level of training because of after 9/11 and the 7/7 attacks in Britain, a lot of money went into transit protection. You see that in the big cities, in New York City specifically. Every time there's a threat, you always see all these New York City police officers and cops who are heavily armed to protect it's the same thing in Dallas. And you see it in a lot of major cities. So those, they're not just on the trains. They're regular police officers. They're regular cops, and they're down there helping out, trying to keep the community peaceful and safe. As we saw tonight, they're sacrificing their commitment to duty, caused the ultimate sacrifice so far for 4 officers and another 7 who were injured.
And, Sean, just to give everybody an update, we're getting a large buildup of police in the West End in Dallas, so there may be something fixing to happen there. To let everybody know where the West End in Dallas is, that is where the Book Depository Building, where the Sixth Floor Museum is. That's kind of in the same area where John F. Kennedy was assassinated, so you can kind of give a good idea of which area of Dallas this is in. So we're getting a large buildup of officers in that area, so we may start to see something happen in the West End.
Gentlemen, I want to talk. Oh, go ahead, Ken.
I just want to give this note. While I am not here to Obama bash, the evening was set off with his comments from Poland, and this is what he said. He stated, "These are not isolated incidents. They're symptomatic of the broader set of racial disparities that exist in our criminal justice system." And I just want to give people a few statistics to try to put in context why emotions are so raw around these issues. What he gave was a justification for the emotional response of what has been happening over the past couple of days.
You're 100% right. 100% right. Yeah. And the other, we've seen this with him before. Every time it involves a black suspect who is killed at the hands of peace officers, especially when they're white, we see him run to this microphone and talk about the racial unfairness in this country. Meanwhile, and if you look statistically, young African-American men are more likely to have an illegal weapon on them than any other nationality that lives in this country today, under the age of 25. Statistically, that number increases. Also, the other issue that's going on is the trumped-up belief that there are police officers who put on their uniform, high-fiving each other while taking off their KKK hoods, and go out there and find black victims to execute. And all of this has been pushed by media and the administration. This belief that
I want to comment on
line up.
I want to comment on that media part, because each of the videos that have been shown on television do not show the whole story of what happened in those scenarios and situations. And the media has crafted an opportunity people to take advantage of that.
Well, and we saw this with Michael Brown. We saw this with Trayvon Martin. Every single time they think they have their victim that they can use to push their narrative, they push it right to the front of the media. It's plastered all over. There's these so-called experts who come on and tell you what happened front to back within 45 minutes of the event. And then we find out later on that it is not nearly as bad as they said it was. And 95% of the time, with the exception of the North Carolina shooting, which that guy should be hung, that police officer, in my opinion, and that's coming from an ex-police officer, I'm telling you right now, the reality is what it is. All of these people keep finding out that they were the wrongdoing. You look at Baton Rouge. Neither one of the videos we've seen so far, you can't see that guy's right hand. The gun was supposed to be in his right pocket. You can't see it. You can't see if it was making its way into the pocket. You have a cop trying to grab his arm when he's all sweaty. You ever tried to grab another sweaty person's arm? And the guy was 6'3", 250 pounds, right? As soon as he felt the gun, there was a 15-second delay. Why? Because they were still trying to get him in custody. If they were looking to execute him, you would have heard gun, bang, 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 bang. They were still trying to take him into custody. It wasn't until the officer felt that he could no longer fight him and that his life or the life of others could have been in danger. That guy put his hand in his pocket and started pulling the trigger, and those bullets shot out through his pants, which they would have without a problem, and hit some nun, some 8-year-old kid. They would have been protesting why the cops allowed him to shoot them.
Let me make this real quick, because you saw definitely the statements from Barack Obama in Poland, where he was bashing the police again. This was a situation, and many people will say, well, how can you blame Barack Obama for this? Here's how you can blame him. He was in a very unique position, having been elected the first black president of the United States. Barack Obama could have made tremendous headways in dealing with black-on-black violence, in dealing with crime and drug issues in our inner cities, in our minorities, in our poorer neighborhoods, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. He was in a very unique position to do something that no other president could have ever done. But what did Barack Obama do? He became Jesse Jackson. He became Al Sharpton. He became the king of the race baiters. What's Barack Obama going to do when he leaves the White House? He's going to become a professional race baiter. Race baiting is a billion-dollar business, a multi-billion-dollar business for the likes of Jesse Jackson, Al Sharpton, Calypso Louis Farrakhan, the Nation of Islam, the new Black Panthers, the Black Lives Matter. Look at how prominent and to the forefront, and quite honestly, how wealthy some of the leaders of the Black Lives Movement have become by facilitating and engaging in this type of violence. Folks, you're starting to see and I have preached this over and over and over again, where we have an administration that classifies Bible believers, Christians, as terrorists. If you're a potential terrorist, if you are a concealed, if you have a CHL, concealed permit, you're a potential terrorist. If you served your country and defended our country, you're a potential terrorist, according to this administration. But yet, who do we see? The most leftist organizations in this country today, the most violent, the most dangerous organizations in this country are the Black Lives Matter movement. It is the Nation of Islam. It is the new Black Panthers. It is La Raza. These are the folks that are causing and carrying out this war on our police officers in the name of racial justice. And Barack Obama is at the leading of the forefront. He is fanning the flames. He is putting the words out there for them to use. And once again, he could have, as the first black president of the United States, addressed a lot of these problems and came up with solutions and been a true leader. But he's no better than Al Sharpton or Jesse Jackson.
Jersey Joe, what do we have so far regarding the scenario in Dallas? And what are some of the people saying to us on the air right now?
Well, I'm looking at Fox News right now, and they're talking to a lot of the protesters that are still around. And a lot of them are all saying, I'm seeing it on Twitter, is they're trying to distance themselves big time from this because they understand that the cops were there to protect them, and now, wait a minute, let me see something. Sorry, Dallas just updated a tweet, and with heavy hearts, we are devastated to report a fourth officer has died, which they did a moment ago. A person of interest whose picture has been circulated just turned himself in. Another alleged suspect was in a shootout with Dallas SWAT officers. That suspect is also in custody. A suspicious package was discovered near the suspect's location. The package is secured by a DPD bomb squad, and they will come up with more information as we receive it. Now, one of the things I was also getting on Twitter, I put up that person's photo, and there's a lot of people saying that he had nothing to do with it, that he turned his gun in as soon as the shooting happened, and that he had nothing to do with the shooting. But now Dallas police is saying different, that he's in custody. So,
So, Joe, can you confirm one in custody and the other one is still on the loose, or did you say both are in custody?
One person of interest with that photo that's being circulated turned himself in, and another suspect was in a shootout and is now in custody.
Okay. So, just...
And the bomb squad has secured the explosive.
They have secured a package that was...
Based on previous experience, I can't believe that 40 to 60 rounds were put out by two guys. I certainly have a hard time swallowing that the guy who's all over Twitter would just walk in and turn himself in when the other guy was into a shootout.
Now, there's a lot of people on Twitter saying he had nothing to do with it. They're saying he...
Right. So he turned himself in... If he turned himself in that quick, and especially, I mean, let's face it, when you know the entire Dallas Police Department's looking for you and you have a gun in your hand and you're running around, you're scared and you think everyone's looking for you. for you to just walk up to the first uniform officer you see, say, "Here's my gun," they think it's me, and it's not. As we heard Comey talk about, innocent people don't have nothing to lie about and nothing to hide. So there's a good possibility that this individual is not one of the involved shooter, and that just based on the fact that he was walking around open carrying, that it was speculated that he was. So there's a potential that there's still another shooter on the loose.
Exactly. For what they're saying on Twitter is as soon as the shooting happened, and there was a report earlier, a guy said he saw some people that were carrying long guns, and he told one of them to immediately turn into the police so he didn't get mistaken for the shooter. And they're saying that as soon as the shooting happened, he turned his gun in and left the scene, and now he has turned himself in. And that
there were actually several people that were open carrying that immediately went to police officers and said, "Hey, we are not here," and handed their weapons over just because they did not want to be mistaken, and shot, which was a good choice on their part.
Well, it once again shows you what lawful gun owners do.
Exactly.
And again, if this is true, if this guy turned himself in to prove and proclaim his innocence because he is innocent, I mean, that's going to be our Constitution. That's going to be our rule of law working well again. He was there because the First Amendment allowed him to be there. He was there with his weapon because the Second Amendment allowed it. And he's a responsible person, if this is true, because once it happened, he addressed it immediately, offered up his weapon because they'll do gunshot residue checks on it immediately. They'll try to match it. They'll hold it, etc. And he knew all of that ahead of time. In other words, he was an intelligent human being who said, I need to make sure that there's no question as to my innocence, and that's what he did. So I'm going to probably guess that he is not the shooter, and obviously Dallas PD will confirm that. I certainly cannot. But so far, this has to be the work of more than one shooter, unless he was extremely, extremely well trained somehow.
Well, they've been saying two shooters for a long time.
Yeah, and certainly it's going to the outcome of the bomb squad investigation will be interesting as well to see if there was an actual operative device that maybe didn't detonate when it was supposed to, or maybe the person who's in custody was supposed to call it and detonate it. Who knows? But if that is an actual device, I'm definitely going to say that there's a much bigger scheme going on here than just the two shooters. Right. And you're also going to start seeing fairly quickly, because we're trying to make a tie to the possibility of this being a terrorist attack by a very dangerous leftist organization. Whether it's a leftist organization here in the United States, what we were talking about, or if it's a terrorist organization overseas, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, or whatever, you're going to immediately start to see the spin on this, just like we saw after Orlando. You're going to start to see the spin on this. It's going to be gun violence. It's going to be another mass gun shooting. We need more gun control. The Democrats are going to The Democrats in Congress are going to have another slumber party calling for a vote on gun control legislation. Dan, here's why I disagree with that statement, because they were just cops that got shot, and they're subhumans, according to the left. And you know what? When have the likes of Nancy Pelosi and all of those guys, Bernie Sanders, when have they supported the police? They haven't. When has Barack Obama supported the police? They never have. That's what I'm saying. And they never will. And that's why you will see. And that's why you will see them. The cries will begin tomorrow. It was already starting tonight. Van Jones, the first thing out of his damn mouth tonight was, "We need legislation for gun control. We need to do this. We need to act on this now." That's going to be the cries tomorrow. That's going to be the first thing you're going to see out of elected officials, especially here in the state of Texas, especially in the Dallas area where we have a lot of Democratic representatives there in Congress. That's going to be the first things out of their mouth, calling for gun control. If we had gun control and kept guns out of the hands of terrorists, kept guns out of the hands of these folks,
just like what we heard after Orlando, that is exactly what they're going to do. And I think you're going to see them step up their calls for gun control.
I'm going to say that whatever's going on is not done with, because you now have armored cars and federal armored vehicles moving into Dallas. It's being tweeted from people on the scenes.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're going to get a special report on as well as High Plains Pundit Media. Jersey Joe, the Weaver of Common Sense, is at the helm, providing us information as it comes in. We also have live coverage from Dan Butcher with High Plains Pundit Media, and as well, Stackhead Sean, Stackhead's Radio is with us tonight, and Tim Clinton, the special conservative, live from Washington, D.C.
And Joe, thank you, Ken. Joe, prior to that, you mentioned that you had federal entities moving in with armored vehicles. That's a very standard response in this sort of situation. This is, in law enforcement, they pull the big red handle when you have this situation going on. And somebody has their TV up, and I'm getting a lot of feedback from it.
Well, my question is, why would they have U.S. Marshals?
It's quite simple. The U.S. Marshals usually in every major city have a standing special operations team, because they regularly serve high-risk warrants and deal with high-violence individuals. So when they do that, they usually have a SWAT team on hand in just about every major city to serve those warrants.
Because it's being reported the U.S. Marshals and ATF.
Yep, and that's common too. ATF,
for the
same situation. Most of the people that they're dealing with, alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, they also cover explosives. It falls under their reign of professionalism, if you will. So you'll have that's a very regular response. You have these teams that are very, very highly trained. They're used for high-risk situations on a federal level. When there is an issue like this, like I said, you get a mutual aid call in which it doesn't matter what entity you're with, you get called up to respond. I'm sure these guys were already on standby anyhow for the potential of violence, because we've seen them in these protests before. So for them to respond so quickly is not shocking at all. As a matter of fact, it's good planning on behalf of the Dallas police.
Hey, Sean, can you give it, because, really the police, it looks like the Dallas police officer, the Dallas Police Department has done a great job in tracking down the suspect and getting to the suspects fairly quickly. Obviously, we had one turn himself in, but also we had the other one that was involved with a firefight with SWAT members and other officers and such. Kind of explain the process that the Dallas Police Department went through in tracking down the suspect, because you're talking about a big, giant metro area, downtown Dallas, high-rise buildings, all over the place. Kind of explain to the listeners, the training and preparation of these guys, though, and what exactly they went through to track down the suspect.
Well, it's different in every city. You have the same kind of general rules for this sort of. They put together an operation plan at the beginning when they know there's going to be a protest. They decide how many people they're going to have be visible, how many people they're going to have not be visible. They're going to have their emergency response set up. They're going to make sure that they know where everyone goes in case there is an incident, including medical care, etc. They coordinate with other agencies. Hey, if we have an issue and we need you to show up, you're going to stage here. And while all that's going on, you also have the officers or whoever, for some agencies it's officers, some agencies it's civilian, who are monitoring and gathering intelligence on social media. Because a lot of these groups will start putting out all their information on social media ahead of time. The other thing that you're doing is you're following all the hashtags that are coming up from this protest. And you're looking at pictures. You're looking at potential threats. You're looking for wanted individuals who have caused problems in the past. Sacramento, we have the same group of protesters that show up every single time and cause problems. They know when they're there, and they monitor their social media. So they're already out ahead of the game, monitoring the crowd. You have people, you have officers all over the place with their eyes on the crowd. And then what happens is you also have media. Media is everywhere.
Exactly.
And not only that, but you have surveillance in all the surrounding buildings. If you have public safety cameras, which we see in a lot of cities now, you're able to roll that back pretty quickly. If the police know where the protests may set up, they might put in one of those portable camera pods to help monitor the situation. All of this has become very, very standard. They've been very, big cities have gotten very used to these protests, and they know how to plan it. So when you have an incident go down, the officers on the ground and the witness usually know where the shots are coming from after a few seconds. And then what you start doing is you focus on that area and you start working out, hey, did you see anyone run? Yes, this is who I saw run. And you start canvassing the people because, like I said earlier, even these protesters, when they're in fear of their life, they're going to give up the information. We talked about it, nobody wants a cop until you need one. They needed one, and they wanted one right then and there. And, that's how you start building that information and getting your suspect information out there.
I want to point out, too, a lot of people that live in the DFW area, and, of course, Sean, you became familiar, and Ken as well, with the Omni Hotel and the different things that they do with the Omni as far as lighting up the Omni and stuff. Right now, the Omni is lit up in blue, and they are flashing the words, "Back the Blue," from the Omni Hotel, which is in the general area where all of this took place. So definitely the Dallas, the folks in Dallas are saying we're not going to be threatened by this, and we're going to continue to move forward. And so if you have a chance, you're starting to see the pictures of the Omni being lit up with the words on social media. So if you get a chance, share that, because it's a very powerful scene to see that coming from Dallas after this tonight.
And by the way, Dan's right. CNN is now turning this into a gun control debate.
Bingo. There we go.
Yep.
Earlier this evening, Barack Obama, President of the United States, made comments from Poland regarding the situation from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, as well as St. Paul, Minnesota. And he makes these comments. He says, there are going to be circumstances where they're going to have to make split-second decisions. We understand that. But when we see data that indicates disparities in how African Americans and Latinos may be treated in various areas around the country, it's incumbent on all of us to say we are better than this, we are better than this. And to not have it to denigrate into the usual political front, we should be able to step back and reflect and ask ourselves, what can we do better so that everybody feels as if they're equal under the law? Well, that's coming after a week where the rule of law was broken when former President Bill Clinton arrived in Phoenix to board with Department of Justice Attorney General Loretta Lynch. It was there at that particular time period where we allegedly believe that he received word that Mrs. Clinton, Hillary Clinton, former Secretary of State, would not be prosecuted for crimes regarding email and server issues with the State Department. Many people around the country saw that as a breakdown in the moral order. On Tuesday and Wednesday night, there were killings in St. Paul, Minnesota, as well as Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Two black men who happened to be resisting arrest from police officers. Well, Black Lives Matter on Thursday took advantage of that and began calling on Facebook and other social media for individuals to march on cities and not to be necessarily respectful of those who respected them. Well, tonight, 10 officers, including a transit officer in Dallas, Texas, were shot at by snipers. In addition to that, 4 of the 10 are dead. 2 are in critical condition at this particular time period.
Ken, can I interrupt for a second? Ken.
And they're getting more data as we come along.
Ken, sorry for interrupting, but unofficially, I'm hearing that a 5th officer has passed away.
Oh, Lord.
And it's also, Fox News had it on briefly, and like a lot of this I'm not going official but there was a small car chase on I-35 involving 20 police cars, and 2 people are now in custody.
Right.
Now, I don't know where exactly, if it's related, but it just seems weird. You got 20 cop cars chasing one car in Dallas.
Well, we saw that with San Bernardino, where, the word goes out to look for one vehicle, and if it's at all related, everybody who's available is going to go on that traffic stop, because if you think it's related and you think that there are somebody who has the potential to use a rifle or be able to put down a lot of rounds downrange, you want to make sure that you have enough force to overcome that threat. So that's not uncommon. Even if it's a car that just sped away from the scene, they are going to investigate it.
Yeah. There's also there's now reports that there is one civilian that has been injured, that was shot and injured during this protest. And I do apologize for cutting in on you guys, but
oh no, cut in. And,
please.
And going back and looking at the history of Dallas, because this goes back to when Lee Harvey Oswald shot and killed John F. Kennedy, and the response that happened and how the police handled that, and were able to get there. And then, of course, we've seen the massive response tonight with this tragedy that's happened in Dallas. Once again, another sniper targeting police officers. And I can't. I want to stress this because, and I don't want to say this, and then I'll come back to you real quick, Sean, because our police officers and have taken they've taken an ass beating the last couple of days over these incidents, and have been given a black eye. They've been raked over the coals, and of course, Sean, you've been in law enforcement, still in security. I've got friends that are in law enforcement. My brother's a firefighter. You cannot speak enough about the professionalism that the Dallas Police Department showed tonight in dealing with this when they had 11 of their own down, and they knew that several of them were not going home tonight. But yet they still went out and did their job. And even while they're looking for the suspects, they're still doing their job protecting the protesters. But yet that's not what you're hearing. That's not what you're hearing a lot about on the media right now.
Dan, I do want to comment on that. When something happens to a police officer, the other officers know that the best way for them to help is to do their job.
Exactly.
It's the only way, and honestly, it's the only way to keep grief at bay, is you go out and you do your job, and you work hard, and you try to do whatever assignment you're given at that moment. And that way, you can get through for however long your agency needs you before you're released, and then you deal with your grief. This is why with police officers you have a high suicide rate, a high divorce rate, high alcoholism rate, and things that we don't talk about in this country. Because of incidents like this where, that person who you went to the police academy with and you spent, the last 5 years of your life sitting next to for 12 hours a night in a car, you know everything about you, they know everything about them. You go work a protest for overtime and he or she's not coming home and you are. The amount of PTSD that's in law enforcement that gets overlooked in this country is immense. Many experts equate it to very much those soldiers who've gone overseas and seen horrific things. You got to realize these officers, they don't just go out there and put handcuffs on people. They're responding to traffic accidents, babies who've been killed or murdered or died, families that have been killed, families that die in fires. All these different things they see every single day, and it builds up and it builds up. And this is something that I've talked about for years. The ignorance of the PTSD amongst law enforcement and other public safety personnel, firefighters, EMTs, that get ignored is tremendous.
Gentlemen, I wanted to introduce something to you, and this was reported in the Washington Times on the 21st of June after the Orlando shootings. And it was a statement by Black Lives Matter where they blamed the shooting not on Muslim or Muslim terrorists, they blamed it on white supremacy. And their statement was, enemy is now and has always been the fourth threat to white supremacy, patriarchy, capitalism, and militarism. These forces, and not Islam, create terrorism. You all were mentioning earlier tonight that this may not necessarily be a target a domestic terrorist target by Black Lives Matter. But indications to me, for what I've seen of this particular organization around the country, is that they have been very manipulative of the emotional situations that come with the grieving families. And while the families grieving are telling them not to get involved and to keep the protest peaceful, we have outbreaks tonight and threats across the country this weekend of further violent behavior by the Black Lives Matter movement. Do any of you all see that they might be a part of the reason for this particular scenario tonight?
Yes.
Real quick, they have video footage of the one shooter
and
shooting.
Ken, it's one of those things, and they're showing a video right now, a horrific video of the sniper shooting at, it looks like a police officer that was taken earlier. This is just frightening.
He does it so calmly.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. This goes back to criminality in this situation, every other situation. Because there are plenty of people who are with the Black Lives Matter movement that are not at all criminals. And they don't have criminality in their heart and in their mind. The problem is incidents like this and groups like this draw out those who are ill or criminals and looking for an outlet for their criminal behavior. And it doesn't excuse the cause, and it doesn't excuse the motivation. Certainly not. But when the two find each other, as we've seen with ISIS, and as we've seen with other terrorist groups, when those two find each other and the weak-minded, and now you're seeing these heroic police officers go in trying to save their partners who were just shot and still taking fire as they're doing it. When those two meet and you have the criminal in the heart, maybe the mentally unstable, and then the cause, and if that cause is preaching to do these things that this person already wants to do, you have that seed of criminality now being watered by a group, by media, by whoever, president, if you want to argue that. And that's what leads to events like this. It's not the gun. It's not because they weren't hugged as a child. It's because they were criminals or insane looking for an outlet. And when you have a Black Lives Matter movement that maybe is, you have some people in that movement who are certainly encouraging violence against police officers. You have Twitter, you have Facebook, where you see people spouting all over the place violence against police officers. Somebody's going to take that opportunity. And you know what? The amazing part is every cop that was there tonight knew that potential was there, and they still showed up to protect the people to protest.
Well, you just look at the video. While when the shots started, the protesters ran and the police officers ran away. The protesters ran away from the shots. The police officers ran towards the shots.
And you see it all the time. Look at what happened in Boston during the marathon bombings after the first explosion. Police officers and EMTs were running towards the blast area when the second one went off. And while everybody else was running away. When I tell people that our public safety and our peace officers are the noble knights of our time, I mean that time and again. They always will run into danger to protect the innocent and get the perpetrator at the risk of their own lives. And for everyone who sits in, who's never done that before, you know when you put on that badge and you go to work that day, your family, you may never see them again, and they may never see you again. And I didn't have family when I did that, but I can remember growing up with my father, who was a police officer, always worrying when he went out the door that he would not come back. And I never saw that worry on my mother's face because she was always putting a strong face on for us. And it wasn't until later that I know that it tore her up every time he went out late at night to go to work.
I want to mention something real quick. Police Chief Brown in Dallas is noting that the shooters positioned themselves in 2 parking garages in downtown Dallas and, quote, plan to kill as many law enforcement officers as they could. Brown is also noting that several of the officers were shot in the back. They never knew what was coming. They never knew what hit them that quick. And so just to kind of put this in perspective, that this, once again, this was not a random act of violence, ladies and gentlemen. This was a well-thought-out, planned attack. These guys more than likely had an escape route plan. They probably had a plan to do more carnage than what they did, because once again, we now know that we've got a suspicious package, the threats of explosives, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And going back to what Ken was saying, do you think that the Black Lives Matter movement could be behind this? You're damn right they could be behind this, because they have proven that they have certainly in the past. We saw it in Ferguson, we saw it in Baltimore, that they will instigate violence. At the drop of a hat, they have no qualms about doing that. And then when you throw the element of the Nation of Islam, the new Black Panthers being involved with this. This goes back to a lot of this goes back to homage of what we saw with a lot of the leftist organizations in the '60s, and a lot of the violence that took place there, with direct links to Barack Obama. You're talking about one of the men that helped launch his political career was a member of the Weatherford Underground that killed police officers, and et cetera, et cetera. And so we're seeing it come full circle tonight in Dallas, Texas.
Let me jump in here real quick.
Fox News is just reporting, and Joe, if this is what you're going to say, sorry. Fox News is just reporting that both suspects are in custody, and they're saying the Dallas police are saying the threat has passed. Both suspects were captured alive. So that's per Fox News in the last few moments. Joe, did you have something else?
Yeah, it's David A. Clark, Sheriff Clark. He has put out a couple of tweets, and I would have to say he's a little bit pissed off. His first one he put out is America needs Obama to get out of his bed and address Dallas situation now. He poured gas on this situation with his dog whistle message earlier. His next one was waiting for Obama, Lynch, and anti-gun bigots to blame Dallas' slaughter of police on the need for more gun control or background checks. And then all the phony outrage and news coverage over 2 police shootings, yet nothing on the black-on-black carnage in Chicago that happens every day.
Bingo.
And
I am long one of those individuals who says that we have a false sense of grief for individual criminals who have a history of resisting arrest and dying at the hands of police officers trying to get home. And we need someone to speak out against black-on-black crime in America who happens to be holding the bully pulpit at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. And it doesn't help when you have individuals giving speeches like LaRonda Talley in Minnesota who says that we are targets. We made it across the Atlantic. We made it to the freedom. And you're still killing us. You're still hanging us from trees. You're still killing us. Our lives matter. The grief and the hostility regarding the police killings never should give people license to feel they, by their emotional substance, have the right to exact justice on others.
And I just got into it with someone on Twitter. They're going on about this cop on black and killing all the Hispanics. But when you look at the actual figures, more whites are killed by police officers than blacks or Hispanics. So this isn't a race issue. This is people not paying attention and listening to some orders. If you don't like what the officer's telling you, being on that scene is not the place to do the arguing. You can argue it in court. You have other times you can argue it. Arguing is going to set a cop into a defensive mode, and that is never a good thing.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. But part of the narrative that drives the Black Lives Matter movement and so many angry, bitter African Americans and Hispanics is simply race. It's race. And that the white officers are out to get them. That narrative compels individuals to go to the voting booth and vote in individuals who do not have their best interests at hand, who will later come back to them and say, we need to take away people's guns. We need to make certain that you have a jobs program, and don't worry about it. We're going to take care of the police and the by and by. That narrative is killing black people, Hispanic people, left and right in America.
I agree.
Yeah.
I absolutely agree. And, you know, Ken, we've talked about this ad nauseum, you and I together, and obviously you on your show. One of the biggest issues in this country is black-on-black crime. And the leaders of those communities are either inept or afraid to admit that they're problems. Where larger black communities live, cities like Oakland, like Chicago, D.C., where you do have a large population of black people living, the crime on each other is through the roof. And they don't realize that part of the sidestep of that is these young people who are growing up in these communities where crime is through the roof are growing up thinking or learning that criminality is the way to live life. And you lose a generation. You lose a generation every single time you don't stop it. They think it's okay. I've talked to kids who think that because they have $5,000 in drug money under their mattress that they're successful. And because, you know, they sling dope for a living at 13 years old, they think they're a man, and they think that they're going to go somewhere with that. There's no future bred into these young people. There's no want to get out of it, because that's all they know, because that's all they're taught, because nobody is breaking the cycle.
What is it? Morgan Freeman said the best thing. Those buses run two ways out of every town. Get your ass on one and get out of the town and do something with your life.
I agree with you.
Hey guys, I want to say something real quick, because I got to run. I got to go do another report real quick. But I just want to close tonight with this, and to really make it sink in. But when you have the likes of Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, Al Sharpton, Jesse Jackson, and they start making absolutely ignorant statements about a police shooting without waiting for all of the facts. What we saw in Dallas, Texas tonight is the result of those statements. And with that, gentlemen, I have to run tonight.
Thank you, Dan Butcher, High Plains Pundit, sir.
You bet.
Ken, do you want to do the station ID and update?
Almost certainly. You're listening tonight to SHR Media and High Plains Pundit Media, a very special report on the Dallas shooting. There were two actual snipers that killed 5 police officers, 4 police officers and 1 transit officer in the great city of Dallas, Texas. 11 altogether were shot. And right now, Black Lives Matter was the organization holding the march against police brutality, upon which this actually broke out. And you have with us tonight Sackhead Sean from Sackhead's Radio Network, and also Jersey Joe, the weaver of common sense, from Sackhead's Radio, Ken McClinton, the exceptional conservative, that's who I am. And, of course, we just heard the final words of Dan the Man Butcher, from High Plains Pundit Media. We've been covering this story over the past hour. We thought it was essential that this story be covered from our perspective, because we know what the morning narrative will be. First and foremost, Black Lives Matter had nothing to do with this. Secondly, this is all because of gun violence, and we need stricter gun laws. And thirdly, the police are the ones that started this, and the citizens have to be the ones that finish it. That all makes up the mob rule mentality of those who happen to be on the left, and it gives poignant opportunity for those in the mainstream media to blur the truth of what's happening in Dallas, Texas. Jersey Joe, you take it away with updates of what's going on.
Well, it's a little bit off subject, but the record of Alton Sterling, the one gentleman that was shot in outside the convenience store.
Baton Rouge.
Yeah, Baton Rouge, thank you. 96, aggravated assault. 97, second-degree battery. 98, simple battery. And 2000, public intimidation. And 2000 again, carnal knowledge of a juvenile. 2001, domestic violence. 05, burglary of an inhabited dwelling place. 05, receiving stolen things. 05, burglary of inhabited dwelling place. 06, simple criminal damage to property, simple robbery, simple theft, drug possessions, misrepresentations during booking, simple battery, aggravated battery. 06 again, aggravated battery, simple criminal damage to property, disturbing the peace, unauthorized entry. 08, domestic battery. 09, resisting an officer, drug possession, receiving stolen things, possession of stolen firearm, illegally carrying of a weapon with CDs, CDs sound reproduced without consent. 09, illegally carrying of weapon, marijuana possession. 2015, failure to register as a sex offender. 2016, failure to register as a sex offender. 2016, ecstasy and marijuana possession.
I bet you there's a resisting arrest somewhere in that.
Yes. It was.
Yeah, there you go.
It was in 09, resisting an officer, drug possession, stolen property, possession of a stolen firearm, illegally carrying a firearm, and the CDs that were illegally reproduced without consent that he was selling.
Well, we now have. I'm sorry, Ken. Go ahead.
I was just going to say the way Black Lives Matter and the NAACP and all the others reach out and grab the Trayvon Martins and the gentleman from
Michael Brown.
The Michael Brown. They have caseloads of where they have gone wrong against our society, and the individuals like a Sharnice Milton and others who have died in the inner city through no cause of their own. Those are the ones that they will not march for. Those are the ones that they will not pay attention to because it doesn't fit their narrative. You see, these are the guys who are really the down and out, and they need to be loved a whole lot better than we're loving them. And so now we have a whole industry, from churches to businesses, educational centers, representatives and legislatures and so on, that are trying to pass bills to satisfy the narrative of the gang members and the others who threaten the city, intimidate people from living a good life, and actually no one ever talks about this because that would be racist.
You're 100% correct. I just got a text message from a friend of mine who's still an active duty police officer, and she said, they were shot in the back. This is our 9/11, and she's talking about the police community in general. The 9/11 attacks. Obviously, we lost a lot of police officers and firefighters and civilians, but the civilians were initially targeted, and everybody else, responded. In this event, and with law enforcement being such a small community and such a small number in this country, this will be felt by every agency, top to bottom, left to right of this country. And this is their personal 9/11. This was an attack on them.
Is this also the Ferguson effect? Is this Ferguson effect in effect today?
Yes. I have no doubt this is the Ferguson effect. And Ken, I think you and I first talked about the Ferguson effect before anyone called it the Ferguson effect.
Yeah.
That's when it became okay to outright assault and attack peace officers. That's when it became acceptable by many on the left. And we saw that night in one of the Fergusons. And Ken, I think you were actually on with us that evening when they shot at the police in the Ferguson protest on that first night when they were destroying their own city. They didn't hit anybody, but they shot from the crowd 3 or 4 rounds. And we've seen it more and more. We've seen executions of police officers, killings of police officers go through the roof. We've seen people literally just start disregarding the rule of law when it comes to a police officer contacting them and then fighting them, because the left actually pushes this narrative out that it's okay to do that. Most people have no idea that it is unlawful to resist a lawful arrest. That you cannot do that. It doesn't matter if you were convicted of a crime or not. As long as they have a reasonable suspicion to detain you and you begin to fight, you've now committed a crime that gives them probable cause to arrest you. And this is, every state has that on the books. I can't think of one that doesn't. And it's been pushed and pushed and pushed. You look at, like I said earlier, you look at social media, you look at the left, you look at all these YouTube videos about killing cops and all that. I mean, there was a moron rapper down in Louisiana a couple months ago who did this video about killing cops because they arrested somebody he loved while he was holding these 3 guns. And he gets arrested because all 3 guns were stolen from a robbery that happened at a gun store a month and a half earlier. And he's on probation. He has a criminal record and should not have possessed them. People are not understanding the fact that the rule of law still exists. And it's funny when they'll pull up statistics to bolster their point. Well, gun violence is down in this country. Deaths by gun are at the lowest point they've been since the 1950s, I think. And throughout the world, we're still closest to the bottom of the barrel of gun violence. Guns are not the problem in our country. It is the citizens that are the problem. It is the wrongdoers. It is the left. It is the groups that perpetrate the belief of trying to bring peace and justice to groups and then use that as a guise for violence and destruction.
I think we need to pay some attention to those who have been stoking the fires of the emotional desires of individuals to have some type of vigilant retaliation.
Yes.
We have a firefighter here in D.C. who is suspended from his job because of the things that he typed on Facebook to incite violence. We have the Black Lives Matter movement and its other ramifications that have been stoked by Barack Hussein Obama, President of the United States. We have individuals who are in office in Minnesota, the governor of Minnesota, who comes out and apologizes for the behavior of the police officer without giving due process to the police officer. We have individuals who have, by their nature, stoked the flame of what happened in Dallas tonight. And I assure you, what happened in Dallas tonight is not the ending. It is the beginning of a crisis in America.
It's going to get worse.
It is.
It's going to get worse.
They can shoot and kill a police officer. They have little respect for anyone else's life.
I'll tell you right now, and I said it earlier, you have these groups out there who think that every single person who puts on a badge and gun is a racist and hates black people, and that's just as prejudicial as if every person who put on a gun and badge did hate black people. The assumption that every cop in this country is this evildoer is absolutely insanity. When we've looked at the statistics, that it's less than 1% of peace officers who wear that badge or wear it unjustly and commit acts. It's less than a percentage. And now you start looking at demographics, because they love to throw out demographics and stats and all this other stuff. What percentage of other races, including white, are committing crimes? It's more than 1%. So don't start telling me that because they wear blue and they're all in people that they're all racist when it's less than 1%. They have a better adherence to law than just about any other group out there.
Well,
Jersey,
it does. Go ahead.
Jersey, Rashad, you all have been in the throes of being public servants in the capacity of emergency care for your community. What is it right now that the families of the police officers and other emergency personnel need? What will they need when the sun rises tomorrow morning?
They're going to need love. They're going to need support. They're going to need each other. I don't know any of the officers that were shot. It's possible the two are from the same family. You have a lot of families that enter into these services, fire and police together. They're going to need long-term support. They're going to need, just like anybody else who's ever lost a loved one, they're going to need that support. But they're also going to need the public to respond. Because this is one of those things that this is so prominent and this is so public and there's such a disdain for cops that in order to fully heal, I really think that they're going to they're going to need that public support so they know that their loved one did not die in vain. Yeah, that's the hardest thing, I think, when you see somebody who is a servant, military, police, or otherwise, who dies. As the family, you look at the fact that did they die in vain? Will their lives be given for the betterment of mankind and the community, which is why they do that job, which is why they're willing to risk their lives every single day? It's not for a paycheck. It's not for most cops and most firefighters. It's not because you look cool and you get this power. It's because you really want to serve your fellow man. You really want to make sure that good people are protected and evil people are brought to jail. And the last thing you want to do is go through a 20-year career and then die and not have the community you serve support your family. It's the biggest slap in the face. So yeah. I would say that they need the love of the community. They need the love of the country. Not politicians, and I'll tell you right now, most people could care less. And politicians are going to show up at every funeral, and they're going to, you'll see their kids next year with these politicians talking about this and that award and whatever. That's not what they need. They need the average person to really understand the loss of this individual, in this case, police officers, who go out every single day for the right reason and try to make their community better. And many of them live in that community for a reason, and it gives them that little bit more to work harder in that community. These are a lot of people who in their off time, they're coaching kids in the same community that may not be their own. They're cleaning up at parks. They're going to churches. They're being a citizen and a good citizen of that. And then when they go to work, they're willing to risk it all on a level that most citizens can't understand. So I think above all, they need their loved ones lost to not be in vain.
I don't even know where to start on that. I mean, doing EMS, most people think is a cakewalk, but the hell I've gotten shot at probably just as much as a lot of these cops out there. And I'll see, tomorrow people will be real appreciative of cops. And by Monday, they'll forget about it, and they'll be back to bashing cops. Mm-hmm. And I saw after 9/11, literally, people were running out of their house, waving at us, waving flags at us as we would go to these EMS scenes. And I had younger guys with me, and they were like, "Oh, great, this looks so great." And I was like, "No, give it a week, 2 weeks, and they're going to be out here cussing at us." And no shit, I think it was a week later, the same family that was waving flags was out there giving us the middle finger. It's right now. You're going to see probably the police will close in within themselves, and that's where the family will be, within the emergency family.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't help. And I've been sitting on this for a while. Don Lemon, CNN anchor, is out there, running his mouth saying that he has to be polite with the police so that he stays alive. That is the stuff that we don't need to be put out there. I joke. And I got someone bashing me because I put out that, someone was talking how police are killing Hispanics and blacks and that, and I pointed out that, more whites are shot by police officers, but I shouldn't do that right now. That shows no compassion.
Right. It doesn't. Facts hurt feelings, Joe.
I know. It's just, and this guy's supposed to be a conservative. I'm like, oh my God.
Well, it's one of those things, Joe, and you know this as well as I do. The first responder community is very close. On the outset, there's always the hard time between law enforcement and firefighter, EMTs, medics. But when things like this happen, the outpouring of support within the community is immense. Not just for the funerals, but afterwards. I can remember after 9/11, you could walk in any firehouse and they'd have you come in and sit down and feed you. There was just that. The bond is there, and it's almost like brothers and sisters that fight.
Yeah, that's exactly
where,
it.
We can give you a hard time, but if anyone else does it, they have to answer to us. And that mentality is there. And it's only because nobody else understands. And I was talking to an active duty police officer today, actually, about this. We were talking about Baton Rouge. Nobody else understands, unless you've been in those boots, what it's like to do that job. What it's like to have to go to all the different types of calls that you go to, and more often than not get treated horribly while you're there. To stand over a 14-year-old kid who was shot in a drive-by while everybody claims to have not seen anything because you can't snitch because that ain't cool.
Yeah. And then they get pissed at the police for not cleaning up the streets.
Right. To go to that SIDS call, the sudden infant death syndrome, Joe, you probably more than me know that. Where you have a family member, when you walk into the front door, hand you a dead baby and expect you to make it live again. Yeah. And and I've had 2 SIDS cases when I was working in the projects in Dorchester. When you get there, there's nothing you can do. And you have these people staring at you like you have the magic touch of God and you're going to be able to fix this. And your heart sinks. Most people don't know this, but you put on the show where you start going through CPR and you start doing all this stuff to this poor child who's no longer living. And as horrible as it is, and as much as you want to keel over and cry, because that's what their family needs at that moment. And you have to suck it up and push it down and just make it go away in order for them to feel like everything was done for their loved one. When you know damn well that there's no coming back. So, unless you've been there, unless you've ridden the fire ring, unless you've shown up in an ambulance, unless you've shown up in a police car, walked up, and medics and nurses and doctors as well, unless you've been on that front line, you can't explain it to other people. And there are plenty of people out there who tell you they get it, but they don't. I've had people tell me, when they find out what I used to do, they'll, one time I was in a car accident, and they try to relate it to you because they're trying to find that common ground. But in the back of the head, you're like, you have no idea what you're talking about right now. And so you smile and nod and thank them, and, that was really nice of you. Today I had a friend of mine texting me, or just before all this happened, that she's a police officer. She's at a baseball game with a loved one, and behind them is sitting these 3 nattering hens talking about the Baton Rouge shootings and how one woman who did a ride-along one time with the police officer, shot a couple guns, knew everything these cops did wrong and was sitting there ripping them apart. And meanwhile, she and her loved one, who's also a police officer, has to sit in front of them. And the double standard in this world is if they stood up and turned around and said, here's why you're wrong, and started to lay it out, that person would have went absolutely insane. And if she found out where they worked, they could have filed a complaint and all this other things. There's a double standard in this world. There absolutely is, but it's public safety and non-public safety. Like I mentioned earlier, the PTSD. I've had friends who've just seen so many horrific things one day after another. They tell you about their shifts, and you're like, man, you can't catch a break. But it eats at them.
I had 6 months of that.
And a lot of them turn to alcohol. A lot of them turn to doing bad things because that's their outlet. One of the reasons why public safety officials have a tendency to go off the reservation is because none of that PTSD or those problems have ever been addressed, and they have to get that outlet. They have to do that wrong thing in order to use that as the excuse to get help for their problem. And it's not even conscious sometimes, which is why sometimes you see veterans do bad things because the VA is ignoring them. So when you do something bad, you get into the court system, and the court all of a sudden, like Sacramento has a veterans court. That court system all of a sudden ushers you into treatment and care faster than it would be if you stood in the line of the VA. You know, I hate to use this metaphor or this analogy, but it's the same reason why a lot of people who want to get a sex change in California commit a felony so they go to prison and the state pays for it. It's that same thing of the end game. They know they need help. I had a friend of mine who committed suicide as a police officer for years. There were signs, and not overt cries for help, but subtle cries for help that went ignored because there's certainly a little bit of macho in the culture, but it just wasn't addressed. This was a long time ago, early 2000s especially. The idea that a cop would have PTSD was never addressed. So afterwards, everybody kind of said, well, how the hell did that happen? And we all went, well, I could have told you. He tried to tell you. The problems are there. So, you know, when we talk about police misconduct, you start going through the background of those who do commit misconduct legitimately, and you find out that they probably had a hellacious career where they were constantly seeing horrific things. They probably had 25 citizen complaints that were all unfounded, but every single time you have to go through an internal affairs investigation and explain your actions, and you're essentially in a court of law being accused, even though it's in a police department, being accused of wrongdoing. After a while, as a human being, that stuff builds up on you. And then all of a sudden you have that one bad day, and you lash out, and the entire world stops, and you're front and center on CNN. Or the exact opposite happens, where you have a young career and you make one mistake that was, and I always go back to the Michael Brown shooting in Ferguson, Officer Darren Wilson. His life was destroyed because he had to do something, and even his own department didn't back him up on it until later on. And I guarantee you, Darren Wilson had to go through, first of all, I doubt he ever got the care that he needed after his shooting, after a traumatic incident
I got to break,
like that.
Sean, I got to break in real quick. Sean, I got to break in real quick. In Baton Rouge, very close to where the shooting took place the other night with the police, 3 people have been shot. About 4 blocks away. They got the protests and all that going on, and 3 people have been shot. They don't know if it's related at this time.
Well,
chances are it is.
And I'm sure that all 3 of them were just turning their lives around.
Just getting off the tram to go down to the opera.
Well, the breaking news is 3 people.
Hey, Ken.
Go ahead.
And I hate to make light of this, but how often do we hear that in these situations? He was just turning his life around. He was on his way to church, all these other things. And then you find out in their history, like Joe right out from the guy who was killed in Baton Rouge, you're like, no, he was a lifelong criminal. Yeah, part of the problem that I blame is in the criminal justice system for him not being in jail, in prison for an extended period of time. Because we've had this theory with our prisons the last few years, 25, 30 years, that it's supposed to be for rehabilitation. That's not what our prison system is supposed to be. It's for you to pay your debt to society. So you have these people who, and you have like AB 109 and Prop 47 in California, where you have these horrific people that are supposed to be doing 10 years in prison, that even though this specific crime that they're doing this hookup for wasn't violent, they have an extremely violent history. They're getting out of jail early from the state saying, hey, thanks, we're really sorry we inconvenienced you with prison. Oh, by the way, you pretty much have no consequences for your actions now unless you commit another felony. Go and be prosper. And these people are going out and reoffending. We've looked at this prison system as a way to fix the broken people. Well, that's not the prison's job. That's not what we do in prison. You can't teach them underwater basket weaving and expect them to come out. You know, I always look at the movie Demolition Man.
Yeah.
when Sylvester Stallone gets put into prison, that's a great metaphor for prison because, he gets put in, and because he was who he was, they implanted, knitting into his brain as his, peaceful place, right? But the other guy goes in, and they load him up full of all this horrible information and then release him into the world, and he's a murderer. Well, that's our prison system right now. Because these people have so many rights while they're in prison, they learn how to commit more crimes and get in amazing shape and go out and reoffend. I always joke, but I think prison should serve nothing but Mountain Dew and Twinkies for food and fatten these guys up so when they get
Mountain Dew and Twinkies? No, it's a choice, man. It's a choice. One of the problems is that we have turned over the keys to the rule of law to those who have no defense of it, who treat it as an aversion. And we have watched our criminal justice system become an extension of the public school system, to become an extension of the psychology system, the social services system. And those were never the intent. And so you have in the District of Columbia, the chairman of the Judiciary Committee for the City Council proposed paying criminals not to be criminals anymore. That's how ruthlessly ignorant we have allowed our criminal justice system to become. And then go into neighborhoods. White cops are going to the neighborhoods where Black Lives Matter, the Nation of Islam, and liberal, progressive, Marxist, socialist, communist.
I have a question. Do we want to patch in? The chief is speaking in Dallas. I could patch it in.
Yes,
go ahead. Go ahead.
And Ken, while he gets that up, I absolutely agree with you. We've developed our prison system to be almost like
again.
A big brother to these people.
We will be sending information out as we get it online.
Can you guys hear it?
I do want to say that I've
not hearing him, Joe. You may
heard
want to
from both the White House
the game may
and the
be down or
governor's
something.
office,
Not getting him.
extending their help.
I have trouble with this part, but
we're
I have
sure
the
gonna
chief
be able
speaking.
To use some help from the governor's office, and we've got so many police officers out tonight that we want to make sure that they're backfilled in the right way.
Tonight, Devin Ann Butcher from High Plains Pundit Media joined us. We have Sackhead Sean from Sackhead Radio Network.
We are in
Also have Jersey Joe, the Weaver Concept from Sackhead Radio Network, and I'm Kevin Crunston, the exceptional conservative from Washington, D.C.
Ken, hold up.
The last 45 minutes have been exchanging gunfire with us and not being very cooperative in the negotiations.
There is still another suspect out there.
Before I came here, I asked for plans to end this standoff. As soon as I'm done here,
the chief's saying that they're still in a gun battle here and there, and
in addition to this second
negotiations,
garage,
unless it's an old press conference.
Recap the previous press release. We.
Hold on, I'm going to go in so I can hear it.
The El Centro garage, and we followed a Mercedes with two suspects who had camouflage bags, who officers end up stopping on traffic in the Oak Cliff area near Polk and 67. And they are in custody and being interviewed. The suspect that we are negotiating with that has exchanged gunfire with us over the last 45 minutes has told our negotiators that
they're negotiating with us held up in a garage in downtown Dallas.
And he's going to hurt and kill more of us, meaning law enforcement.
This is when you need to reach out to
bombs all over the place in this garage and in downtown. So we are being very careful in our tactics so that we don't injure
this has been
or
one
put
of
any
the
of our
worst
officers in harm's
for
way,
the law
including the
of
citizens
law
of
in America.
Dallas
We are watching
as we
mob
negotiate
rule
further.
on display from
We
Pennsylvania
still
Avenue,
don't have
Dallas, Texas.
a complete
And while there are
comfort
different
level
levels of status
that we have all the
and
suspects.
influence and power, the
So we
results
will
are still
continue
the
a
same.
very,
People are dying.
rigorous
People
investigation.
injured.
and search
and the rule of law
downtown
is completely
we're likely to be working throughout
in our
the early morning hours of Friday.
David O'Brien,
until we are satisfied that
right now,
all suspects have been captured
we're following him
and have opportunity to be interviewed
as we get
so
the
that we
information.
can fully understand.
Well, I do have the police chief patched in and going through it, and he just said they do not feel comfortable saying they have all the suspects. They have 2 people in custody from a Mercedes vehicle. They have the 2 other ones, and then they still have the one in the garage that they're in a gun battle every now and then with.
Yeah, they're negotiating Mercedes not being compliant. There are 2 individuals that are in Mercedes that had camouflage bags that were stopped in the Oak Cliff area and taken into custody. There was a female, they believe, that was involved. That was at the same garage where the now shooter is held up in, who's also in custody, and the investigation is obviously ongoing.
Everyone knows that the first 48 hours of any crime is essential in solving and bringing solutions and peace to the community. We hope that they can recover each and every one of the snipers that was involved. And this is, I want to ask you, Sean, this type of crime is not something that's just planned at the local Burger King a couple hours before it happened. This took a little time and effort. Am I correct?
Well, I mean, yes and no. Part of the things that I don't like to do is give too much credit in this situation, only because any idiot can kill, and you get 2 or more idiots who want to kill, and you can kill a lot of people. This wasn't a operation in which they were moving and they were hitting different areas like we saw it, say, like Charlie Hebdo, that sort of operation. In Orlando even. They knew, and I'm hearing 2 parking garages. I've seen a couple maps. They've probably seen these protests before. They probably knew where the police were going to stage. And they set up in these 2 garages, and they kind of pincered them, a pincer move. But to say that it was a huge planning process, this wasn't the same as terrorism per se. In that planning sense, there's not that pre-op planning like you saw in Orlando where the guy had been there 10 times. But
this is not done, guys. This is not done. They are a new protest has formed just down the street from where the 4 officers were killed. There's a new protest that's forming, and
a new BLM protest.
It looks like, and it's not gonna. It doesn't look like it's going to be a peaceful one either. I'm not trying to be judgmental, but...
No. And you know what? This is where people, Ken, you asked me earlier what the families of these people, of these victims would need, these officers. They need a counter-protest to start showing up to this. We had it a little bit after Ferguson. You see some people taking to the streets for pro-law enforcement. You need that more. We need to have the masses of good people. And if it costs you a vacation day, and, Joe, you and I talked about this early in this week with Hillary, and I said, on your show, why aren't people protesting the federal buildings? Why aren't good people in front of federal buildings and the FBI offices right now demanding to have answers?
Yeah.
And not in a violent way, but in a peaceful way. Be heard, be seen, and let the people who've been potentially victimized show their support. I say the same thing for this. People need to get out, and they need to protest, and they need to, you find the areas with the highest amount of crime in your city, and that's when you go protest for the police, pro-police, and let the officers and the citizens down there know that these police officers are loved and cared for by the community. Even though you have a small contingency who are lawless, that doesn't mean everybody is. Because I'll tell you right now, there are cops sitting at home tonight watching this on the news asking why they should go to work tomorrow.
Yeah.
Why should I go to work when 4 cops are killed, and if this protest is starting up again, after 4, potentially 5, which hasn't been confirmed yet, police officers have been killed, 11 shot total, and they're still going to protest down the street, why should I even put on that uniform tomorrow? I can go be a plumber and make more money.
Fox 4 News is now reporting that the suspect that's in the garage who says that the end is coming. He wants to kill more police. He claims that there is more bombs planted downtown.
Yeah, and the potential's there. And if that's the case, if there's truth to that, if there's truth to bombs, the only reason, Ken, I doubt that I was doubting the large amount of planning is the incidents that sparked this round of protests were less than 24 hours ago. Now, they may have used the information with previous protests of where that protest is going to be. Many of these BLM protests go through the same routes because, they believe it or not, a lot of them will work with local law enforcement and say, hey, what can we do where you won't get us in trouble for, wrongful assembly, blocking streets, etc. And I know that sounds crazy, but I know locally that that's happened where the protest organizers are usually very okay with speaking to law enforcement about how can we do this that you will not have to do much for, to get in our way and we won't get in your way. So these protests have a tendency to take place in the same couple of areas. So they may have had that knowledge prior. As far as a bigger scheme, if this guy is accurate, if this was a multiple-person operation, if there are, in fact, explosives around Dallas, if there are more people, we worry about that in the first responder community of secondary explosives and being drawn into a bigger attack. You saw the tactic really pop up in World War II where they'd shoot one GI in the middle of a field, and when the other ones were coming out to rescue them, they'd start killing them one at a time. That tactic is a big concern for law enforcement. You see that secondary explosion, you see that secondary attack where they draw them into an area. If this is the case, if this is true, if there are more explosives down there, if this was a multiple-person operation, then I would say that this was a much larger terrorist cell that was waiting for an opportunity to have this sort of an incident. So they had a plan in place, essentially, hey, we'll drop all these bombs, we'll kill as many cops as we can. As soon as we have a way to do it, a concert, a protest, whatever, we will move then. And then I will submit to the fact that there was probably a larger plan in operation. If this guy is just blowing smoke up law enforcement's rear end in order to buy himself some time for some reason before he kills himself, and it was just 2 or 3 people who were just meeting in a basement and they said, hey, that protest is tonight, yeah, let's go kill everybody and be famous. Okay, that potential's there as well.
Now they are saying 4 shooters were involved. 4, and the 7-Eleven where that protest is forming has closed down real quickly, but a large crowd is gathering, and they have a line of cops, and we know the cops are not going to be in the mood to be putting up with any bullshit, and that's a bad recipe right now. You have the crowd that's fired up, and you have the cops that are fired up. And what else?
And the other scenario here is that civilian lives. We know that there is one civilian who is dead tonight from the firing. But when you get back in an organized state that's already chaotic, you can have some very dangerous things take place. It behooves families to, if you're listening in Dallas, call your kids, bring them home. There's always another time to protest, but this is not the time to get silly. This is not the time to get into the face of the police officers. This is not that time. There will be other days, other nights in which you can do that, but for the sense of sensibility, tell your children to come back home. It's for their own good, and it's for the good of the nation as well. You're listening to a very special coverage. And I thank God for this opportunity to have Jersey Joe, the Weaver of Common Sense, and Sackhead Sean from Sackhead Radio on the air with the exceptional one, Kim McClinton, covering this story in a way that you won't hear it on the mainstream media. You're getting live coverage, you're getting the information, and you're getting the tidbits that actually make up the understanding of where we are in the scenario and situation. Part of this was a provocation of early evening when Barack Hussein Obama, President of the United States, spoke from Poland And while he did not inflame his oratory, encouraged resistance. There were those who were wrapped in the resistance of the Black Lives Matter movement. We don't know if they are the designers of what happened to the Dallas police officers. We can only speculate at this moment that there were 4 snipers involved in this, and they shot 11 police officers, including 1 transit officer. 4 of them are dead, 1 civilian dead, 2 in critical condition, 1 in a very life-sustaining, life-threatening situation at this particular moment. Sean, tomorrow morning, someone in Los Angeles, someone in Washington, D.C., someone in Chicago, someone in Memphis is going to wake up and say, you know what? To heck with it. Let them police themselves. I'm not going in that neighborhood. Is that what's going to happen?
We saw it in Baltimore. We saw it in Baltimore after the riots. You saw police officers who were responding. There was zero proactivity. Some of it was fear, and some of it was just complete frustration. You know, when a cop hits the streets, you get a mix of the type of work that you do. You have your radio calls, or now it's an MDT, the computer that tells you, hey, go here, go there, or the radio call with a dispatcher saying, you have this call for service. And that's the majority of your job, but you also have proactivity. Joe, getting a lot of background again. You also have proactivity. These are when officers go out and they look for that bad person who nobody's called on yet. You know, it's essentially how Freddie Gray was contacted. Somebody saw somebody that they knew was a criminal in a high drug area who's known to deal drugs. They try to contact him because reasonable suspicion that he is engaging that said activity again. And that's what the proactivity side of law enforcement is. And you go out in your community, you're playing basketball with the kids, you're talking to your neighbors, you know, you're touching lives, all these other great things that cops do. But really, you're looking for the bad guys who the good people don't realize are bad guys. And they're everywhere. You look for that criminal behavior, that known criminal behavior that the average person doesn't see. And you try to stop them before they hurt somebody, before they deal that drug, before they steal that car, before they break into that home. You try to stop them, ID them, do whatever you need to do, whatever evidence presents itself, you go down that road. So and that's really a lot of the best police work in this world has been done through proactivity and self-initiation versus a radio call. And you know, usually it's something small to start that turns into something bigger. You know how many fugitives have been caught over a broken taillight or a littering charge where they get stopped by a police officer who turns around and says, something's not right here, and starts doing a little more digging, and then you find out that they're wanted for murder and they're using aliases and all these other things. This is part of the policing. So you remove that from policing, and you're going to see crime, as it did in Baltimore, go through the roof. And I can't blame these officers for not wanting to engage in that manner anymore. Hey, why should I go, you know, what could be the last call of my life unless I have to go because of that radio call?
I mean, when you look at your baby, I mean, come on. If you're watching Fox News, some of you all, you're seeing the guys taunting the police officers, calling them outside of their names, showing no favor or disrespect towards them. They are grieving at this moment because their brethren have been killed, some cowardly being shot in the back. And so you look at your baby and you think, I want to see this kid graduate. Is it worth going over to Southern Avenue and Benning Road and dealing with a drug deal? Is it worth it?
No. And, you know, it used to be, especially when my father was a police officer, more so, you know, it used to be that pride of work. You know, you went out there and you did it because it was the right thing to do, and you had so much pride in what you did. And cops today still have that. The thing is that There was that machismo approach because nobody else would do it. You got to understand, law enforcement. Everyone asked why cops in the Northeast were Irish. New York and New Jersey and Boston, back in the 30s and 40s, it was all Irish that did those jobs and firefighting because they were poorly paid and nobody else wanted to do it. And the Irish just came out of the 1910s and 20s when they first came over this country, and nobody would give them a job. And as a matter of fact, Irish murders in those areas weren't even investigated because they were just an Irish guy and they didn't care. So the Irish actually started taking those jobs in law enforcement because nobody else would, and it was horrible pay, and you worked like crazy. But then what happened was, as time went on, it became the machismo. Nobody else still wanted to do that job. But
hey, guys, can we hold on for 1 second? Can we hold on? I got to disconnect you and plug a power cord in real quick. So sorry about that. I didn't notice how low my battery was getting on the phone. And the scene's not looking too good at this 7-Eleven. You got a bunch of gentlemen that are throwing gang signs at the cops now, getting in their face, jumping back around. More cops are showing up. They actually brought a bus to the scene to try to get people to leave. They've now removed the bus, and you got more tactical geared cops showing up, and it's not looking good there. But it doesn't help when we have idiots on Twitter, and you have this one gentleman tweeting out 4 dead cops. Whoever shot them deserves a medal. F the white racist police. Cops are racist pigs. This is not helping anything, even if there is an issue and one of these shootings or both of them are bad. That is not helping. That's making the problem worse.
And here's the other thing too: is events like this will bolster some people's theory in that regard. And what you'll do is when you have that crowd, and you can start hiding into the crowd, because most of these people that will do it are cowards. So that crowd empowers them to act out and be stupid and throw up the gang signs. And the other thing that these idiots don't realize is there's still somebody held up in a garage with a gun that the police should be focusing on, but they are now having to tear out resources to go babysit these idiots. And now, if somewhere in Dallas somebody is getting hurt, murdered, raped, killed, whatever, and there's a 15-minute response time, it's because the officers that are babysitting these morons aren't in a patrol car able to respond. So I guarantee you tomorrow somebody will call the Dallas Police Department. And the Dallas Police Department can't turn around and say, well, why don't you blame these morons who were protesting after potentially 5 of my fellow officers were killed. You have to sit there and take it. You know, when I say there's that double standard, there's that double standard yet again.
Norman Brooks is a D.C. firefighter who tonight is under suspension from the D.C. Fire and EMS Department. As reported on Fox 5 in Washington, D.C. by Paul Wagner, he posted this on Facebook, and he is not the only one. I don't want people to think that this was provoked by the efforts of just this one man. But this is the grunt that has been fostered over the past 24 hours. He quote, bottom line, these racist blank cops who murder our people need to start turning up the same way. They shouldn't feel safe walking the street, and neither should their supporters. Protesting is a lost cause, and it makes us all look like a bunch of blankety-blank. These evil blankety-blanks don't have any compassion. They are going to let them pigs go free and probably start a GoFundMe and make a millionaire. It's time to stop praying, stop protesting, start buying guns, and start protecting ourselves from these crooked blankety-blank racist cops. If you are a cop and are not in support of these people, then it's about time to start turning these types of blankety blank in, or at least giving out some addresses so we the people can handle them. This, my friends, is from an individual from the D.C. Fire and Emergency Medical Services Department, part of Engine 23 in Foggy Bottom on the campus of George Washington University. He was suspended for this, but this type of vitriol is not isolated, in the words of Barack Hussein Obama, President of the United States. This has been fire-fed 24/7 through social media, Twitter, Facebook, Pinterest. There have been individuals who have spoken as if they were subject scholars on what happened in Baton Rouge, Baton Rouge, and also St. Paul's, who have no clue as to what happened and can't tell by the videos that were taken. And please stop telling people that those videos were clear enough for you to come up with a decision. You don't know exactly what happened. Go ahead, sir.
Ken, this goes back, and we're coming up to the 2-hour mark, and I'm honestly going to lose power to my phone here shortly.
Yeah.
But this comes back. All of this comes back to raising your children. At the end of the day, this comes down to raising your children right, raising your children to be respectful, raising your children to respect law, raising your children that if you get contacted by a law enforcement officer, if you've done nothing wrong, you have nothing to fear, and you be compliant. And if you're just in the wrong place at the wrong time, or you happen to be wearing the same clothes as somebody else who did something bad, you do what you're supposed to do and then deal with it afterwards. That's the way our criminal justice system is set up. Parents don't teach kids that these days. It starts in school when kids see their parents yelling at the teachers because the teachers discipline them. Nobody's going to yell at my baby, and that sets into these kids' heads. And as they get older, there's that police officer, they hear mom and dad in the back of their head going, nobody's going to yell at my baby. And now all of a sudden the fight starts. You look at the guy in Baton Rouge. I guarantee you that he did not grow up the son of a pastor, or the son of a pastor and a lawyer. And I guarantee you that his juvenile record was just as bad as his adult record. Because, as I said before, we're not breaking the cycle in our communities. We're not. When I worked in the projects, you saw it all the time. The cycle is not being broken, and lives are being lost, and those lives may live until they're 92, 93 years old, but their lives are lost and wasted because nobody has encouraged them to better themselves and to do the right thing and be a productive member of society.
Jersey Joe, give us your final comments for the evening.
Well, I find it disgusting as I'm watching I'm seeing CNN, who says that Dallas PD shooting was courageous. When you have CNN commentators making comments like that, I think that says it all with disgust. And it's just...
And I'm not shocked, Joe.
I wasn't shocked either. When I saw it, it was like, yep.
And who was the commentator that said the shooting of police officers?
I can't see the name. I can't see the name on it. There's like a little.
Everybody
video.
should tweet them.
I'm trying to see if I can find it. It's. Yeah.
Courage is the exact opposite. Courage is the fact that there will be officers that will put on their uniforms tonight and tomorrow morning and go to work. After this, knowing that they're targets, that's courage.
Yeah.
Courage is the people that go to work every day to pay their bills and raise their kids right. That's courageous. There are men and women in our military who go overseas and give their lives so we can be free. That's courageous. It's the person who's willing to stand up for what's right in the face of what's wrong. That's courageous. To say that a couple of monsters with rifles shot police officers in the back, is it all courageous, might be the most fucking stupid thing I've ever heard in my life. Pardon my French.
It's really sad in our country when we have the media raising their fists in the air as if they were Tiger Woods at a victory at the U.S. Open.
20 years ago, it's since Tiger won.
Yeah, I know. I got to catch up. But to raise your fist in victory that 4 police officers are dead, 1 citizen dead, 1 transit officer dead, 11 shot, and still these men and women are on the battlefield, disciplined and babysitting gang members, and to be so condescending, so callous, so this is the America that's been created over the past 8 years.
Yeah.
Hope you're proud of it.
I don't know what's sadder, and I know this is going to sound weird. I'm sitting here just wishing that I could still get on a goddamn rig and do my job and get out there and try to help. I'm thick-headed enough, and I'm trying to give the mentality of those that do these type of jobs. I would still go out there even today. The only difference between now and then, well, is I started wearing a bulletproof vest after my daughter was born. That's all. Otherwise, I would still be out there right now. If it wasn't for my injuries, I'd be out there. I just don't understand people's mentality.
Joe, I'm the same way. If I wasn't fat, bald, and old.
That's what's nice with EMS and fire. You could be fat, bald, and old and still do it.
Well, there's 90 is to cook one steak. And I do want to wrap up and just say, of course, from all of SHR Media, our thoughts and prayers are with the Dallas Police Department and the families who are affected by this. Those who are trying to recover from their injuries, lying in the hospital right now, and those who have lost that loved one who wore a uniform tonight and will never return home. And my thoughts and prayers are with them as their years of trying to recover and may never fully recover, to the children of the loved one, of those officers, and the wives and the husbands and the parents. Those lives are affected forever. Brothers, sisters, cousins, friends, best friends. The Little League team who won't maybe have a coach come this Saturday. It doesn't just affect the person in the uniform who's lost their life. The entire department. It affects all of these people. It destroys communities, even if a little bit of the time. It pulls a little bit of love from this world. And it's an abscess that will try to be drained in so many different ways. But the reality is you're not putting that life back on this earth. You're not putting that person back in the uniform. The community will not be touched by that individual ever again. And it is a true loss for not only Dallas, but for the entire country. My thoughts and prayers are always with the men and women who put their lives on the line for us. So you, me, Ken, and everyone else can come on this radio and say and have our opinions. So our children can go to school, all these different things. That's what these people protect. And that's what these people were protecting tonight. They died protecting the First Amendment. And they did so for $65,000 a year and a couple weeks vacation. The tragedy out of Dallas tonight will ripple our country, and I only hope that people will finally use this as a positive. And again, as I said earlier, not let these lives be lost in vain. Get out there, support your local law enforcement, support your fire department, support all these first responders, support the military, protest in these areas, get groups together, get signs, protest, stand up for them, stand in front of them at the next Black Lives Matter protest. You always see the police line mustered at one side, making sure that nothing goes wrong. Get them between. Get them between the protesters and show your love and support for these people. Give them a reason to wake up every day and put on a uniform and get in that car and potentially answer the last call of their life. Give them that reason. Give them that support, because right now it's not coming from government. It's not coming from so-called political leaders. It needs to come from the citizenry to protect those who protect them every single day.
Amen. If you all don't mind, I want to play taps for the lost officers and their families.
It's fitting.
I would absolutely be happy to stand at attention for this.
Good night. God bless each and every one of us. We'll have more details about this weekend on various shows, and Jersey Joe will be covering this as well. Thank you so much for tuning in to Fact-Is Radio Media and the Jersey Joe Leroy Coniston Show. I'm Kim McClinton. God bless you.
And we'll be cutting out on the show with Amazing Grace.